Solomon's Wealth Code. Introduction. There is a reason. The richest man in history was never chasing money. And if you miss this, you will spend your entire life doing exactly that. Because everything you've been taught about wealth is incomplete. Not entirely wrong, but just incomplete enough to keep you running in circles. You work harder, you try to earn more, you push yourself further than most people ever will. And still, something doesn't move. Money comes and disappears. Opportunities appear and vanish. And no matter how much effort you give, there's a limit you can't seem to break. So let me ask you something. What if the problem was never your effort? What if the problem was the way you think about money itself? Because over 3,000 years ago, a king understood something that most people today will never see. Not because it's hidden, but because it's uncomfortable. He understood that wealth is not created the way people believe it is. And this is where everything begins to shift. Because the man we're talking about didn't just have money, he had influence, power, clarity, a level of understanding so precise that people traveled across kingdoms just to hear him speak. His name was Solomon, and what made him different was not what he had, but what he saw. Because while others were chasing outcomes, he was studying patterns. While others focused on effort, he focused on structure. While others tried to earn more, he understood how wealth actually works. And here's the part most people miss. Those principles were never lost. They were written, preserved, repeated for thousands of years. And yet, almost no one applies them. Not because they don't exist, but because they don't look the way people expect. They don't feel like shortcuts. They don't promise instant results. They don't appeal to the part of you that wants something easy. They require something else. Awareness. Because wealth is not random, it is not luck, and it is definitely not fair. It is predictable. And once you understand the pattern, you start to see it everywhere. You begin to notice why some people build wealth consistently, while others repeat the same cycle no matter how hard they try. You begin to see decisions differently, opportunities differently, even failure differently. Because what you're about to discover is not a strategy. It's a code, a way of thinking that determines what you see, what you ignore, and ultimately, what you create. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. So before we go any further, understand this. This is not about motivation. This is not about working harder. This is not about chasing money. This is about understanding the system behind it. Because the moment you do, everything begins to change. It begins with something you've never questioned, the way you think. Chapter 1. The Invisible Prison. Why you feel stuck financially. There is a prison that most people will never see, not because it is hidden, but because it feels normal. It doesn't have walls or bars, and yet it keeps millions of people locked into the same financial reality year after year. You wake up, you work, you try, you push, you plan, and for a moment it feels like you're moving forward. There are glimpses of progress, small wins that suggest you're getting closer. But then something shifts. An unexpected expense appears. An opportunity slips away. A delay, a setback, something just out of your control pulls you back. And suddenly, you're right where you started. Not because you lack discipline, not because you aren't capable, but because you're operating inside a system you were never taught to see. A system built not on visible rules, but on invisible patterns. These patterns are subtle, almost silent. They shape the way you think before you even realize you're thinking. They influence your decisions long before you consciously make them. And over time, they create a loop, a predictable, repeating cycle that governs your financial life. Because here is the truth that most people never hear. You don't experience money itself, you experience your interpretation of money. And that interpretation was formed long before you ever tried to build wealth. It was shaped in conversations you barely remember, in attitudes you absorbed without questioning, in beliefs that settled into your mind so deeply they now feel like facts. Think about it for a moment. What did money represent in your early environment? Was it something abundant, something that flowed easily and freely? Or was it something scarce, something fragile, something that had to be chased, protected, and worried over? Did you grow up seeing control, strategy, and calm decision-making around money? Or did you witness stress, urgency, and reaction? Most people never pause to examine this. They assume their current financial situation is simply the result of how hard they work. But effort, when applied inside an unconscious pattern, doesn't create change. It reinforces repetition. It makes the cycle run faster, not differently. And that is the trap. You can work harder, you can push yourself further, you can even increase your income. But if the underlying pattern remains untouched, nothing fundamentally changes. The numbers may shift temporarily, but the outcome remains the same. This is why so many people experience what looks like progress on the surface, but feels like stagnation underneath. A new job, but the same stress. A higher income, but the same financial pressure. Bigger goals, but the same quiet frustration. It is not a coincidence, it is a loop. This loop is what keeps people in place, not a lack of opportunity or intelligence, but a lack of awareness. Because the most powerful systems are the ones you don't realize you're inside. And the most dangerous part of this one is how familiar it feels. The human mind does not naturally seek success. It seeks certainty. It seeks what it recognizes, what it has already experienced, even if that experience is struggle. So without realizing it, people recreate the same financial conditions again and again. Not because they want to, but because it feels known. It feels predictable. It feels safe. Over time, this repetition shapes belief. And belief, when repeated long enough, becomes identity. People begin to tell themselves quiet stories. That wealth is for others. That money is difficult. That success is rare. That no matter what they do, something always holds them back. These ideas settle in so deeply that they are no longer questioned. They are accepted as reality. But what if none of that is true? What if the issue was never your effort, but the pattern behind your effort? What if the real limitation was not outside you, but within the structure of how you perceive and respond to the world? This is where everything begins to shift, because Solomon understood something most people never see. You do not break a cycle by doing more inside it. You break it by recognizing it. The moment you see the pattern clearly, it loses its power over you. You are no longer reacting unconsciously. You are no longer moving in circles without realizing it. Awareness interrupts repetition. And once that interruption happens, even slightly, a new possibility opens. This is why real change does not begin with action. It begins with perception. The moment your thinking changes, your decisions begin to change. And when your decisions change, your direction changes. Not all at once, not dramatically at first, but enough to alter the trajectory you've been following for years. Because your financial life is not built in one moment. It is built through thousands of small decisions, each one influenced by the patterns you carry within you. But here is where it becomes even more important to understand. Changing your thinking is not about forcing positivity. It is not about repeating phrases or pretending everything is fine. It is not about ignoring reality. It is about seeing reality more clearly than you ever have before. It is about identifying the pattern itself, the invisible structure guiding your behavior, and realizing that it can be changed. Because before money ever appears in your life, it appears in your perception. Before opportunity becomes real, it becomes visible. And what you are able to see is determined by how you think. This is the first shift, the first fracture in the invisible prison. And once that fracture appears, it cannot be undone. Because once you begin to see the pattern, truly see it, you are no longer trapped inside it in the same way. And this is where we move deeper. Because there is a principle behind this shift, a precise mechanism that governs what enters your awareness and what remains invisible to you. It is the first code, the foundation of everything that follows. And in the next chapter, you are going to understand exactly how it works and why it has been shaping your financial life all along. Chapter 2. The first code. Wealth begins in thought. There is a moment, subtle but decisive, where everything begins. Not when money appears, not when opportunity arrives, but much earlier than that, in a place most people never think to look. It begins in thought, because before anything changes in your external world, something shifts internally, quietly, almost imperceptibly, shaping what you notice, what you ignore, and what you believe is possible. Most people assume they see reality as it is. They believe they observe the world objectively, that opportunities are either there or they are not, that success either exists for them or it doesn't. But this is not how the mind works. You are not seeing reality directly. You are seeing it through a filter, a mental lens that has been forming over the years, influenced by experiences, beliefs, fears, expectations, and repeated patterns of thinking. This filter determines what stands out to you and what fades into the background. It determines what feels achievable and what feels out of reach. And without realizing it, it is quietly shaping your financial life every single day. Because here is the principle that changes everything. Money does not follow effort first. It follows perception. It follows what you are able to recognize, what you are prepared to act on, and what you believe is worth pursuing. Two people can exist in the exact same environment, with access to the same information, the same resources, the same possibilities, and yet walk away with completely different outcomes. Not because one had more luck, not because one worked harder, but because one saw what the other did not. This is the first code, and it is both simple and unsettling. What you see is not everything that exists. It is only what your mind allows you to see. Think about how often opportunities pass unnoticed. Conversations that could lead somewhere are dismissed. Ideas are ignored because they seem unrealistic. Possibilities are overlooked because they don't fit within what feels familiar. And this happens so naturally, so automatically, that it doesn't even register as a decision. It feels like reality itself, but it is not reality. It is a selection. Your mind is constantly filtering information, deciding what is relevant and what is not. It is protecting you from overload, but in doing so, it is also limiting your awareness. And the criteria it uses to filter that information are not based on what is objectively valuable. It is based on what is consistent with what you already believe. This is why someone with a scarcity mindset will see risk where opportunity exists. They will focus on what could go wrong, on what could be lost, on why something might fail. And because of that, they will hesitate, they will withdraw, they will miss the moment. Meanwhile, someone with a different internal framework, someone whose perception has been shaped differently, will see possibility in the same situation. They will recognize the potential, the leverage, the opening, and they will act. The difference is not the situation, the difference is the perception. This is why simply trying harder does not create wealth, because effort applied to a limited perception only reinforces the limitation. You cannot act on what you do not see, and you cannot see what your mind has already decided is not possible. Solomon understood this at a level that most people never reach. His wisdom was not just in what he knew, but in how he perceived. He did not react to the world as it appeared on the surface. He understood the deeper structure beneath it. He recognized patterns, connections, and opportunities that others overlooked, not because they were hidden, but because others were not prepared to see them. And this is where the shift begins for you. Because once you understand that your perception is not fixed, everything changes. The filter is not permanent. It can be examined, it can be challenged, it can be restructured. But first, it must be seen. Ask yourself this: what have you been consistently overlooking? What ideas have you dismissed too quickly? What opportunities have you assumed were not for you? Not because they were impossible, but because they did not fit within your current belief system. These are not random